I have to talk on a topic called ethnicity and trans-cultural differences in pre-diabetes. We have some domain knowledge because this word trans-cultural was actually coined by a good friend of ours, me and Dr. Jeffrey Mechanic from Mount Sinai. I'm keen that my good friend Luke knows him. And also Osama Hamdi from Harvard and Gospel. So these are the two people who actually pioneered the trans-cultural global algorithm. And the American College of Clinical Endocrinology, there was an entire symposium dedicated to trans-culture, because culture, every 100 kilometers you move, the culture changes, and with the culture, the food changes, lifestyle changes, and you get diseases. So that's really the DNA of my talk. And we are Indians, Asian Indians. Dr. Mohan showed some seminal work. I'm sure I have a disclaimer and warning, and no offense meant to several sponsors who are outside. It's not that we don't like them, but no other field in medicine and science is influenced by self-proclaimed experts in nutrition science. You want the PPT?
Yes, it's done.
Okay. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. You will operate from there? Internet better? Fine. Thank you. This is modern technology. I send on WhatsApp my slides to Sudha. They are here. So thank you for that. And now somebody else will operate it. Anyway, this slide probably was a disruption because there is a power of big food industry. And they are critical, criminal, and they have devastated the world. I am very open about it because we know the sugar lobby influenced the entire fat lobby and they made saturated fat as a villain. We know that truth now. The truth is out after a very, very long time. And that's the truth. And Dr. Mohan is there. He has led some seminal cutting edge research. You saw some Nature Medicine papers. So there are these self-proclaimed experts and there is also the industry. And then they make guidance. And now all that is going away. Because we now want evidence based. So my disclaimer and warning is I don't have any duality and conflict of interest for this talk. I do consult for a lot of companies, but they have not influenced this presentation at all. And pre-diabetes is a part of diabetes. And when I was the chair of the IDF Southeast Asia region, we actually came out with a pre-diabetes algorithm for Southeast Asia. And now globally that same algorithm is being continued, and Mohan is on that committee. And IDF clearly recognizes pre-diabetes is call for action. It's call for action only for two reasons. That's a window of opportunity to intervene and change destiny. Because you can become a non-diabetic, you can become normoglycemic, and therefore we need to change destiny. And we know that insulin resistance is a strong predictor of pre-diabetes. And it's linked to hypertension, obesity, glucose intolerance, dyslipidemia, endocrine dysfunction, end organ damage, and hyperglycemia. All this is a cluster. And I'm sure Dr. Mohan presented his cluster work. So when you contextualize it, current aspects of nutritional medicine have failed to bend the prevalence curves of metabolic disease. This is the truth. So let me be very honest, all of you are experts in domains in nutrition, but despite of all the advances in nutritional medicine, we have not done anything to bend the curve of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. And this failure occurs in practice, in research, in education, on a domestic and a global scale. So that's the truth. Worldwide, before COVID, 4 million people used to die due to diabetes. Today, 6.8 people die due to diabetes, despite of all those drugs, everything we have. And this is the truth. So we need to recognize the truth. And the failure results from the premise that one of the two focused interventions need to impact physiological state. So I want you all to think out of the box here, because you are students, you are future of India, you need to change biology and think out of the box for solutions for our own people, because my context is purely for Asian Indians who are born in India and outside of India. And clearly we need to recognize, unless we look at the underlying factors, we won't be able to come with a solution. And therefore, we need to have a solution to recognize the complexity as a normative and then look at a network-to-network interaction. So that's really the truth. We have a lot of definitions: nutrition, which is the interaction of diet, environment, and metabolism. Then my friend Dr. Jeffrey Mechanic coined a term, molecular nutrition. There's a book he has written. I would urge her to read It's published by the US Endocrine Society. It's a complex interaction of nutrient molecules which target metabolome and epigenome molecules. Then we have a term called eating pattern. What is eating pattern? It's aggregate of nutrients as foods or molecules over a specified period of time. Then we have a whole new definition of dietary supplements. And they are molecules now, and they are under Act. In India, it is the FSSAI Act. Then we have nutraceuticals, which are higher concentrations of dietary supplements. And then we have this big EDC, endocrine disrupting compounds, which molecules which have a lot of negative impact on target networks. And then we have nutrients, which are molecules which have a positive effect on the targets. And Dr. Mechanic put all this out in a very nice paper. And if you want a full text of this paper, it's an old paper, it's exactly a decade old. Okay, and he says if you have diseases like diabetes or obesity, the pathway insulin signal transduction or adipose tissue differentiation, there are molecular targets, there are nutrient targets, and there are whole foods. So there is a linkage between what we eat, what is the nutrient inside that food, what is the molecular target there, what is the pathway there, and that is how it is derived. So I would really, and that is all linked to culture. So we are all human beings and we all came from Africa. And I'm sure many of you all know this slide that early humans migrated from the epicenter more than 100,000 years ago from the out of Africa theory. And we worldwide went on the globe based on the DNA, and that was where the last year's Nobel Prize went on the mitochondrial, which is the orange, and the Y chromosome, which is the blue. And that's how we migrated. And Indians are no different. We are a mixed race. We clearly recognize that we are a mixed race. So our phenotype, which is the Asian phenotype, and Professor Mohan is here, and many of us have coined this term and he has done some seminal work and we have collaborated very actively. There were genes of early modern humans, which means there was a genomic evolution shaped by genetic variability because there were diverse gene pools. See, we were not a single gene pool. We migrated with the blue and the orange from different pathways. There was a diverse gene pool, gene flow, and the human populations mixed over time. And then we have exposome. We are exposed to a climate, we are exposed to food, we are exposed to predators, including our mobile phones now, toxins, lifestyle pathogens, geographic barriers. And what has that led to? That has fundamentally led to mutations, epistaxis, pleiotropism, and the natural selection process has got disrupted. And that has led to a phenotypic trajectory. That's how a phenotype gets evolved. That's how we have become thin fat Indians. That's how the whole phenome space is evolved. And that's how it's actually happened. So Indians are unique. We have diverse cultural phenotypes, clinical phenotypes, different manifestations. We have issues with cost, complications, adherence. And I recognize Dr. Mohan, he said that we should not be really looking at diabetes prevention now, but we should first make people living with diabetes complication free. That's really our first goal. And I'm sure you must have already alluded to that. And the first step towards that is recognizing pre-diabetes, but we are different. We did a twin survey long time back, 8 states of India, more than 16,000 population published on first 10 patients walking to a general practitioner's clinic for anything, cough, cold, fever, vaccine shot, anything. And we screened them for blood pressure, for glucose, for lipids, and we measured their waist circumference and they measured their BMI. And lo and behold, we found, this is primary care and general practitioners, 86% had drunken obesity and 73% were overweight or obese. So we are an obese population, but we are thin fat Indians. So fundamentally our phenotype is thin fat. And this was a twin study which we did. And we are more fat, less muscle. So we have sarcopenia, sarcos is muscle. We have abdominal obesity. Is it genetic? Yes, it's familial. Is it environmental? Absolutely yes. Two terms which I remember Dr. Mohan and myself giving a lot of talks on this. One is affluenza, which he is pointing out time back. We have become affluent. And one is sedentarism, which my friend Dr. Jim Levine and myself pointed some time back, and we actually wrote an article on that, on sedentarism. And the first seminal study on thin fat Indians did come from India. It actually came from Mary Ann Banerjee, And Marianne actually migrated from Calcutta to New York, in the suburb of Brooklyn, with one of our mentors, Professor Harold Leibovitz. And she actually picked up young people between 27 and 63. And then she picked up Asian Indians from India, Bangladesh and Pakistan, who used to drive actually cabs in New York City. Then African Americans and Caucasians. And this was the first seminal paper which documented that the Asian Indians who were normal, they were not diabetic. They had 33% of their body as fat, while the African American and the Caucasian, only 27% of their body was fat. And then of course, multiple authors, including Professor Mohan here, replicated what she found. And this was the difference. That in the non-obese Asian Indians, we have much more body fat inside our body, and that is what matters. So our phenotype is central obesity or obesity at a lower BMI. And that is why we are at a higher risk. This is our phenotype. We have more fat, more total and abdominal region fat, less lean mass, and that is why I like to do, because if you look at him, you need to build that muscle mass. If you want to counter sarcopenia, go to him. He will teach you how to do that. Okay? And he's really a brand ambassador of Fit India. So the modern face of malnutrition for India is a low lean mass. Across all body weights and BMI, it's very, very clear cut. Because even if you are thin and lean, unless you are below 19, okay, everyone is susceptible for this modern phase of malnutrition, which is sarcopenia. And that is why they want to do the hand grip trend. Are we really different from Chinese? Because Chinese and India, we are in competition. Whatever we do, Chinese replicate. I don't want to start a war here. Mohan is here. He knows it exactly the truth. He gave a talk. We were number one in the world in 2011 in diabetes prevalence. Suddenly, the Chinese government decided to publish a study in New Journal of Medicine, listening to Dr. Mohan, and they became number one. Okay. And then we have published a study where he's the major author now, and we are his contributors with ICMR India, which I'm sure he showed, and now we are back as number one. But that's not something which we are proud of. We should be the diabetes care capital of the world. Two things are very clear cut. Indo-Chinese have diabetes at a younger age. They have a greater tendency for beta cell failure, and our body habits, whether it's Indian or Chinese, Indo-Chinese, are leaner in body habits. These three things are very clear cut. The trend is very clear cut. I don't think there are any issues. Beyond that, everything is a cluster, and cluster. And I am not expert on cluster service. I'm sure he has already told you the cluster, and he is really working with Anjana and the entire team, and we are a part of this collaborative team. And we know very clearly we eat more carbs. We have some contributions there, and our SGLT2 inhibitors, alpha glucosidase inhibitors, gliptins, we respond better to them. So when you look at development of diabetes, because pre-diabetes is all about development, it is the first phase of insulin secretion and the second phase of insulin secretion which is lost, physiology. And that is where that impaired fasting and impaired glucose tolerance comes in. And the Americans, they forgot that whole thing. They only focused on fasting glucose. They forgot that 1 hour and 2 hour, Dr. Mohan's father used to do. And we used to do it when we were in medical school. I remember late Dr. Bhandarkar at KM Hospital used to do every 30 minutes GTD. And that has gone. But that is actually the first indicator of loss of first phase of insulin secretion and second phase. And that's where you pick up pre-diabetes. And that is sinister, and that's something which we need to recognize. So we are a carbohydrate country. I remember late Professor Sam G.P. Moses used to say, all the diabetes in India only occurs in South India because we eat a lot of carbohydrates. We do idli, vada, and dosa. So all carbs are there. And all diabetes research are also in South of India. But that's not true. Okay. Now there are researchers all over. And we did this last study where we wanted to show that whole India is a carb and fat country and is protein deficient. Very clear. Okay. And this was a very simple cross-sectional study which we showed that we eat more carbs. In fact, the maximum carbs in India are consumed in central India. They are most sust and must. They have 2 branches. They really enjoy life. They love their siesta. In fact, they have kept their lights on here. If you are in central India, all the lights will be off and everybody is snoring. The snoring quotient and the speaker has to shout sometimes. Mohan is smiling. He was there recently in Madhya Pradesh, and we know the truth. So central India is the highest carb. South India and West is almost same. East and north is also same. So it's not, we are all over there, and that's what we showed. And very clearly we can see the same with non-diabetics and diabetics. So what did we show in that class study? Clearly we saw that we are a carb-fat country, and we, even if we know we have diabetes, okay, we still will continue to eat our carbs and fats. I don't think we really care. Because they go to doctors like me, Dr. Mohan or anybody around, and they'll say, doctor, you give the medicine, I will continue my idli dosa, whatever I have to do, I will do. This is unfortunate truth. That is why those rates are not changing and people are still dying. So you need to recognize that the truth lies in basics, and you need to recognize that better. Then they told me, Sudha told me you have to talk on trans culture. I said, pre-diabetes, what are you going to discuss for 2 days? So she said, you have to talk on trans cultural diversity. I said, India is very diverse. You go into one room, everybody different. Okay, everybody eat differently, walk differently, talk differently. Okay, so our Indian cuisine has social identity, has a religious identity, has a cultural factor, has an agriculture practice. Agriculture has 2 meanings. Okay, if Jagmeet tells me something, I have to agree. So it's called agriculture because she wants it her way. Okay, that is also agriculture. And agriculture means you have to physically be active also. Okay, and there are so many foods available. Right now, I want a cup of chai. Chai will come in 19 flavors, even in this hospital. Okay, but they have claimed, the nutrition experts, which are all of your domain experts, there are 41 dietary patterns in Indian sort of one for atlas, beautiful atlas, and from that atlas, this compilation I have picked up. I don't know whether you remember it, sir. It's from your atlas. Indian cuisine map. He autographed just yesterday. He gave me a beautiful book of Sai Baba, and Om Sai Ram. But very clearly you can see that there is a huge variation in dietary pattern regionally. And if you summarize that, North India is fat heavy, South India is carb heavy. So there is some truth in what Professor Sam G.P. Moses said. Very clear. Western India is again fat heavy. We are all ghee, laddu, everything we have. And East India is carb heavy. So the summary of that is we love carbs and fat. We don't like the protein. Okay. Protein is yucky. Nobody likes the milk and the soya and all that. And everybody wants to have carbs and they want to have fats. And that is where India is. I'm done almost, don't worry. Okay, I get that well. Okay. We are all physically inactive. Television is the primary culprit. I am more in a hurry than you all are. And we are sust and much and sedentary. Okay, so we have something called as non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I have patients who come and tell me, I do 1 hour of walk, and I can see Archana here in the audience. Sorry I didn't notice you. This is my good friend. I walk 1 hour on the Juhu beach and still I got diabetes, hypertension, I have to come to you, I have to do angioplasty. That is because they don't do need, they are not fidgety all the time. They are all the time, our biggest problem in India is our agrarian Indian was physically active. Their need of 2000, it dropped down to 700. We have become less fidgety, and that is called need. Again, we have become more insulin resistant, and that is how the phenotype evolved. This is a second slide. Dr. Mohan compiled, and many of us are authors in that. Long time back in Japan, lower age of onset of type 2 diabetes, lower threshold of BMI, insulin resistance, rapid beta cell dysfunction, dyslipidemia, low levels of adiponectin, inflammation, low muscle mass. Okay, whenever you think of low muscle mass, think of Lou and look at his muscle. Okay, I'm going to put a picture for you around. Okay, extra fat, metabolic liver disease. Now they change that. Non-alcoholic term also they change. Because alcohol is a stigma. Okay, and the word fat is also stigma. So they de-stigmatize. There's no birth weight. Dr. Yagnik is there in Pune. He thinks everything is in utero only. Okay, and we are not all people arguing with it. Okay, scientifically. But that's the truth. Not everything is truth what he says. Sometimes we argue because in science you have to argue. If you don't ask questions, if you don't argue, then you are not a good student. If you are an agriculture student, then that's bad. Okay. Then we have no people in defeats like pandemic. I'm done, man. Don't. When you move, I get scared. Okay. Phenotype, metabolic, dietary, genetic, these are all our cultural DNA. And therefore, my friend Dr. Jeffrey Mechanic used 3 other terms: ABCD, DBCD, CBCD. So ABCD means adiposity-based chronic disease. DBCD means dysglycemia-based chronic disease. And CMV-CD means cardiometabolic based chronic disease. He coined these terms, and it's all in the pre-disease stage. All in the pre-disease stage, which is where pre-diabetes is located. And pre-diabetes is located here. We cannot have complications in stage 4. We cannot have disease in stage 3. We need to intervene and get into normal glycemia. So Dr. Mohan told you this in the question answers, that there are characteristics of pre-diabetes. IGT is more important than IMG. In fact, I say in India, IMG should be banned. I'm very open about that statement, and I don't think there is anything. And it's all in the mitochondria. It's all in the mitochondria. Professor Nayer's group, Professor Diffranzo's group showed that in the muscles, they do not have mitochondria, which make appropriate eating. You can see here, that is how type 2 diabetes evolves. As I told you, we respond differently. At a lower dose, we respond to glucose. This is not a particle study, this is not a bone study. We respond higher to sitagliptins, and therefore we need to have a trans-cultural approach. And it's all linked to resources, dietary patterns, physical activity, socialization. And therefore, there is an algorithm for that. Dr. Mechanic coined that, and for the Indian transculturalization, we need to do anthropometry. So measurement is very important. We have to look at sarcopenic obesity and increased protein, physical activity including muscle building. We have to look at religious and fasting issues, poverty, and glutinous food which we have. And this was the transcultural algorithm which Dr. Mohan, myself, Jeffrey Mechanic, all of us are authors on that paper. It's already a published document. And we can also reverse diabetes by using technology. I'm skipping some of these slides. We have tried to show that. And my final slide is, everybody talks of yogs and babas in India. So I urge that all of us also should learn that domain. Okay, I think we should all learn. Because Surya Namaskar is the most complete physical exercise. It's a perfect balance. It's a perfect balance, and Maharishi Charak told us very clearly, of sympathetic and parasympathetic system. You can see here, it balances the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. Because all the 12 postures of Surya Namaskar, they balance it. And again, a scope for research for all of you, that do some work. And I have a very good collaborator in Calcutta, Dr. Sambho Samazdar. We actually made anxious students chant Gayatri Mantra, and they actually improved their athletic performance. We did Om chanting, and this is not religious at all, so don't forgive me for that, and even yoga elderly for COVID. But the last point which I want to talk is, pre-diabetes is nothing but early diabetes. It's call for action. Don't think that it's pre-diabetes means I don't have diabetes. It is early diabetes, we need to hit hard, hit early, and that's what we need to do. It's a precursor of type 2 diabetes. We have a malignant transformation, and that's what I'm sure Dr. Mohan has said, that's his word. It's a very, very rapid transit from pre-diabetes to diabetes in our population. It often lands with macrovascular disease, and therefore lifestyle intervention is the key. My mantra always will remain the same: eat slowly, eat less. Even if you don't eat today, it's fine. You can do a fast. Okay, but eat right. Do physical activity, build some muscle. Okay, use Luke as a brand ambassador. Do some yoga, but don't use Ramdev Baba as a brand ambassador. Okay, use somebody better, because there are many more yogacharyas around, and many of us do yoga. Sleep well and sleep on time, and smile. Because don't be stressed out. Don't be stressed out. All these people I know, their timetable has gone for a class. I'm sorry about that. And please, we have become ecologists, and our fingers are most important because we need to do 1 hour of digital detox every day. Okay, half an hour before going to sleep and half an hour after getting up from sleep. Do not use the mobile phone, television screen, or your computer screen. You will clutter your brain. And therefore, there is a new term called dopamine fasting. So do digital detox. And health is not only about being healthy, it's also about happiness. So pre-diabetes is call for action. It's early diabetes. We as Indians are predisposed to it. And I'm grateful to the organizers for allowing me to be here. Thank you so much.